Question for you. What does it take to not just run a business, but to build one that truly thrives? Today on Seizing Your Greatness, we're diving into the strategies that turn good business owners into great leaders. I'm Julianne Meyer, and my guest today, Lee Walker, has helped over 300 small to medium businesses master accounting, people strategy, and overall business success. He's got a master's in business psychology, an SHRM certification, and a Six Sigma green belt. He knows exactly how to create a workplace that doesn't just function, but flourish. His global experience from studying in the Netherlands to living in Peru while learning Spanish has created a unique edge in understanding culture, leadership, and growth. Let's welcome Lee to the show. Welcome, Lee. So glad to have you here today.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me, Julie.
Yeah, we finally made this happen. It's been a long time in the making. And I just want to highlight really quick that you're not calling, but you're in with us from Peru at the moment. And I think that is really cool because you've created a life doing what you love, but also where you want to be. And I think that there's a lot of people out there watching today that think that that's impossible. So I would love for you. I mean, I know we're going to dig into some other things first, but I find that absolutely fascinating. How did you find the courage to actually just go for it? Because moving to a foreign country is not the easiest thing to do.
Yeah, it's definitely not super easy. And honestly, every day I find out it's a little bit less easy. But there's, at least for me, I try not to let any obstacles really keep me down. When I set my eyes to something, I make it my mission to make sure that happens, as long as it's super reasonable within the bounds of reality. So it's actually my goal to spend at least a year in every continent. Antarctica would probably push him back about 20 years, but the rest, and then within the 2020s, early 2030s, because I think learning about other cultures and other languages, other perspectives is extremely important.
I agree with you on that 100%. As you know, I've lived in a few different foreign countries, and it really does. It's kind of interesting that you don't really know how much you don't know until you leave the country, because it seems like this ecosystem in the United States, where I am right now, is all there is. And especially if you're American, it's kind of like that's the mentality. I'm not saying that it's not like that with Canadians or with Italians or anything else. It's just what we know. And I'm curious, since you do have this perspective now that's different from most, how has that changed the way you do business?
It changes it because I think a lot of the time I'm thinking about what else could be going on that is underneath the surface that I don't know about. What are maybe some micro communications that either I'm communicating unaware or that other people are unable to completely communicate the way that they're expecting to. As I'm learning Spanish, which is not the first language I've learned foreign, I learned French first, then Dutch when I lived there, and now Spanish, because there's all these nuances that aren't even just nuances of that place, but just of their language, of their family, just the way they think about things that sometimes just aren't even communicable in the language you use. And so when I'm talking to people, I try to think about, okay, what are the differences in the language and what they're trying to communicate rather than what they're able to communicate within the bounds of their understanding of reality. And then how can I work with them to help change that and use information or other words? Because in English, especially, we're very famous for borrowing from many languages. There's lots of things that don't otherwise exist in English, but you can do that in any language and just be like, okay, yeah, we're going to just adopt this because we don't have a better equivalent. And I think that also speaks to business in general as well. And even different industries, different markets can have those different impacts.
I like that you mentioned that it's kind of a melting pot with language here. It's so hard. English is by far, I think, one of the hardest languages to learn. Fortunately, I was born into it. So, whew, thank
Same.
goodness. But But I'm just curious too, because you mentioned about like this idea of borrowing language, like nuances and things. Because and for those that aren't aware, when you do start to learn another language, there's words that don't exist at all. There's all these things, but you figure out what that means, and it's a different way of communicating. You figure out almost like without words, but using them. It's a very interesting aspect to travel
Mhm.
that I think is absolutely unique. But I'm curious because I know my brain thinks completely differently now than it did before. How has that really helped you grow your business?
So for one, that obvious is I've seen so much opportunity down here where a lot of people in Peru only know how to do business in one way or in a
Mhm.
couple different ways. And so as I'm learning Spanish, I'm learning ways to help people here. But also, there's a lot of mixed cultures in the US. And so maybe, and I haven't fully tested this out, but there maybe aren't as many people who are bilingual that can help the businesses that need more help in the US as well with some language issues, or that just don't really resonate because there are other cultural aspects to running a business or reaching more markets. And so, what I can help them do is say, hey, if you want to meet people from this other side of the world society, or even with a subculture within our society, I can connect with them better than other people can. And I think I come off as genuine and wanting to learn about people, where even in a conversation I had with another potential partner client earlier today, is they're just like, I like that I can tell you want to help people. Somebody else was offering something relatively similar and they just felt like a predator because all they were trying to do was make the sale. And they were just like, this is what I'm going to do for you, rather
Mhm.
than, hey, what is your reason? What makes this make sense for you? How can I help you? And whether it's something that's a paid aspect or just some tips, I'm always happy to help the people around me. And they can see that as I work with people from all kinds of different places and backgrounds.
And that helps too because you have been in other countries too that I think it's easier and I might be putting words like into your mouth, but I think it's easier for you to connect with more types of people because you've been in situations where you are the minority. You are the one that sticks out like a sore thumb because I mean, people know when you're American.
Mhm.
We have a look
For
about us.
sure.
Just for those of you who don't know, we have a look about us. People know we're American when we're abroad, wherever that may be. But you mentioned a little bit about like this idea of the sales, and I think that when you're trying to create a profit for yourself, a lot of people are afraid of. I heard this term, and I love it. It was commission breath. They don't want to have
Mhm.
commission breath, and I thought that that was really kind of interesting way of saying you don't want to come off as that desperate shark that is just out to like get your blood and all that. So,
Mhm.
since
I
you
like that.
are in that arena, what does profit accelerator mean? Because there's people out there that are like, that sounds so cool. How can I work with him? So, if you wouldn't mind explaining to us how you do service people and help them grow that income.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So, what I use is a software called the Profit Acceleration System. And what it does is it utilizes various strategies to help business owners understand where there are places in their business that can be improved and show what the actual impacts of those are. Now, what I start with is understanding why you are doing the business you're doing, so that, and what your goals are, so that I can fully understand where are you coming from, what
Mhm.
are you trying to fund. Because one of the things that some business owners don't necessarily take to heart is that profit is how you are able to do things. Because if you're not profiting as a business, now of course if you're not profit, it's a little bit different in mechanics wise, but profits encompass all of your cash, whereas revenues don't. There's all
Mhm.
kinds of aspects that come into it. And I have access to, on the basic level, 12 strategies, on the more advanced level, 40 strategies that help you really look into where can I be making even slight adjustments, things that we can work on in a month that are going to have a 5%, 10%, even 100 to 200% impact on my business that I'm not currently utilizing or activating. One of my ones that I really talk to people about the most as their major struggle is, how do we find the clients that we really want to work with? How do we reach them? And in our system that I use, and I work with over about 500 other coaches that use this same software. And we all come from different backgrounds. And I'll explain that a little bit more in just a second. But the favorite one is this market dominating position. And it's similar to a unique selling proposition. So how do you differentiate yourself from the market? But with a market dominating position, it really focuses on who is your ideal client? What are the problems that they're facing that they don't want and have? And what is the solution that they want and don't have as far as the solution? And how do you connect those ideas into a message that you can get across cleanly and repetitively that is easily understandable? Because once you can just craft that message, it is going to help you attract the people that you're looking for, and vice versa. But it takes time and effort. It's a lot of soul searching. It's a lot of, hey, what have we tried that works? How do we eliminate platitudes from what we're talking about and just be clear and concrete and explain in a way that makes sense? Luckily, and that's just one of these strategies that we use that has a really big impact. That one normally is around on average 20 to 30% of a revenue increaser once we solidify that. But some of the businesses I've worked with, it's 100%, 200%, because they're finally getting a message that people resonate with, other than, hey, I do bookkeeping.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have to interrupt you really quick because I want to point out some gold here that you just dropped. And there's a couple things. One is, you're not about reinventing the wheel. It's what's being left on the table. And I know for me, one of my objections is I don't do scripts. I don't want it, but and that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about like finding the thing that you will keep on saying because it's the same message. It doesn't matter, because when you have those right people in front of you, you're going to be saying the same things over and over again. And if you're like me, it gets repetitive, but like now you know what the system is and now you can start building. And so I love that you're saying, like, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I'm just trying to help you make the wheel turn easier.
Hoping to grease the wheel.
I wanted to mention that because there's a lot of people out there like, well, why do it's never like throw everything out that you've already created. It's how do we improve what you have, right?
Yeah, it's a refinery. It's not always a creationary. Like I work with businesses that already have the business running, but they don't have the processes set up neatly. And it's like, hey, great, I have this tool, but I haven't put much time in it. I just have it because I needed it. And then once I get my feet under me, I can start using this tool, for example. And a little bit of my background that also really helps this is, I worked in the accounting field for 3 years, so I can use resources on that. We did some fractional CFO work, so I can utilize some really good forecasting and budgeting tools that just emphasize and encourage and facilitate the more functional aspect of the strategies I look into. And I also studied as a HR consultant. So I also work with a lot of the people side of the strategies, how to have better tools, mindset, and skill set to really create the full system for your business so that you're not leaving anything else on the table.
Now, I think that is a really important distinction. And you said something that I want to focus on right now, and that is tools. And I know that you have written a book, so I'm going to pop that up here for everybody to see. Can you tell us about this? Because I think that this is, for some people, they're kind of like dipping their toe in. How advanced is this, and what can people expect?
Yeah, so the book is largely a walkthrough of the 12 strategies that I focus on in the profit acceleration system. So It is not a heavy read. It is very dense, but you can read it in about 2 to 3 hours and get lots of great gold nuggets. It really goes in to identify A, what is the strategy and what does it entail? B, how can I use this to really make a difference in my business? And then gives an example, and then identifies why this is relevant to you. So it can be that, an example is of one type of business, but one of the main things of working with a coach like me, for example, is that we can use strategies from across different businesses that maybe isn't super common in your industry, but it can be applicable. And so it's not just, hey, what is the strategy? What is it? But why is this useful? And what's some impact that can happen? And
Oh,
that's where that really goes into.
yeah, you are really speaking my language, because I want to know the why. Why me? Why this? Because if I'm going to invest my time and energy into something that I don't know if it's going to work, I want to know why it's supposed to work. And if it isn't, what do I need to adjust? Because it isn't, it's not the process. It's something I'm doing with it. So I just want to highlight this idea of that, you have a book, but people can work with you one-on-one. And for somebody, what is a normal, you mentioned before, about the increase in revenue before, but what are some things that you have seen happen with the smallest tweak? And what was that tweak?
So sometimes the smallest tweak can just be increasing your prices a little bit. That's one of the things that people are always the most afraid of. And I put it to the test. We, in my software, will say, hey, if we increase prices 3%, what's that going to do for you versus what is it going to do for your clients? And is that really going to mean that someone's going to stop hiring you or stop using your service, depending on what your business model is? And the reality is, normally it's around 20% of a price increase before you really get to a substantial amount of people leaving. Now, what's incredible, though, is that price increases purely hit the bottom line of profit because you don't increase any of your expenses that way. So a lot of times, for example, you increase your product, maybe your McDonald's, and you have a $2 cheeseburger, and you increase that by 5%. So now it's $2.10. How many people are going to not buy that cheeseburger because it's now $2.10? Very few. Exactly.
They might complain, but they still buy it.
Yeah, they're gonna feel a little bit more annoyed on it. And if they're paying with cash and they brought $2, that might be the difference of the sale or not, because they only had $2 and now they're kind of annoyed. But since in the U.S. especially, most people are paying with a credit card, probably aren't even going to notice the difference until they buy 30 burgers that day, and they're like, "Wow, this is now $3 more than it was yesterday." So it is really unlikely that that price change is going to have an impact. And normally what you can see is, instead of hey, I can actually lose 30% of my clients and then just end up even from a small price increase. And I illustrate that more in the book with some specific examples and numbers, but it's very clear that that's not a huge impact, depending on what amount you try to do. However, alone, that strategy isn't always just the best, because you also want to increase your perceived value. I would never say, hey, we are increasing prices, thanks. It's you pair that with, hey, we're adding this new value, or we just added this value 3 months ago. You got it at the old price for free for 3 months. Here's the free trial. Now we're increasing the price to match the value that we're providing. And then you can continue in a cycle. You continue to add value, continue to create a better product, and then the price increases similarly.
And it's justified. So, mentally, here's the thing too, that I'm glad that you brought up this pricing thing and increasing your prices, because whenever I'm working with people and they'll tell me, I'm like, okay, just tell me what you think that you would charge for that. And they'll tell me, and it's always so low. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not even industry standard. You need to be higher than that. But also the other part of it too is, do you understand the worth of what it is that you are providing or the service or the product? Because if you don't feel it, people won't buy it no matter what price it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
and in addition to that, some people, when they're looking for products, they look at a bottom level of price because if they're perceiving value, if you're priced too low, people think it's a lower product. I mean,
yep.
that's how you look at something, for example, that Walmart sells, and you're like,
Mhm.
all right, should I go for the higher brand level or the Walmart store brand? And even though it could very well be the exact same product, someone will pay more for their item because there's a perceived value.
Yep.
And if you're looking at hotels, for example, and a lot of times people say, hey, I don't want a hotel that's less than $200 a night. I want something between the 200, 300 range. If you're a hotel that's normally 300 and you're running a discount that day and it's 190, you don't show up in the search, that's a missed sale that you don't know about.
Yep. That's very true. That's a very good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. We're running a little low on time. We only have about 5 minutes left, not even. So I always like to ask my guests, what is something you wish I would have asked you? And then answer that, please.
Hmm.
I know
I
it's a weird
guess,
one.
yeah, it's a good one. I wish I had prepared a little bit better. But one question that I guess I wished you asked was, uh, what drives you to do this business? And I think my answer is I grew up working with so many bosses that just weren't very good, many managers, many business owners that don't really consider the full impacts of what they're doing and don't really know what to do, and they don't seek help. So I went to do my math.
Uh-oh, we have a pause in action. Hold on just 1 second, everyone. So I'm sorry, you were saying masters?
Yeah, so I did my master's in business psychology, and what the focus is to really understand the research behind how employers can really get the effects that they want, but also how to treat their employees better.
Mhm.
So that's what came into the people advisory program, the HR consulting that I was doing. But it really needs the full perspective because it's not enough to know the people. It's not enough to know the accounting. It's not enough to know how different strategies fight the business. You really need the full perspective to really be a top business that really people truly respect and want to be a part of.
Mhm.
And so I personally wouldn't say that I have all the discipline necessary to really create a massive business or really the interest. But what really drives me is to help others achieve their goals. And that's something that's resonated with me for many, many years of my life. And even during COVID, when I was looking for a job, because I finished my master's shortly before COVID started, for one of the worst times to look for a position in known history. But I created this program called Lee School Friends, where I just looked at all the people that I had met in my life that were doing some entrepreneurial work, whether they were an artist or starting some business or any other initiative that they were starting to help others, and made a platform for them to get to know each other, but also get their names out there just a little bit more. And now I can do that with a lot more structure, which really makes me happy.
I love that. I just like this idea of not just taking one aspect, but considering every person as a whole being, whether
Mhm.
you're working with them, for them, they're under you, they're your consumer, it doesn't matter. Everyone's an entire person instead of turning us into things. So I definitely appreciate that. We were talking about your book a little bit earlier. Where can people find it?
Yeah, so the book can be found just by emailing me is the easiest way to do it. My email is lee@dailydriverconsulting.biz. It's also my website. Just take the Lee at away from it, and you can go there and request it or send me an email and get a little know more about what I do in depth and see if it makes sense for me to help you, or even see if there's other people I can connect you to that makes sense, or just a chat.
I like that because it's the whole person.
Exactly.
Well, Lee, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging in there with us, and I'm glad we got to do this finally. I've been looking at it on the calendar and pushing it out and fixing it, and yeah, for those that are watching, this has been a long time coming. So thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been something I've been looking forward to as well, and looking forward to possibly in the future again.
Absolutely. And everyone who's watching us, once again, thank you for joining us. We will be back again next Thursday. And until then, we'll see you soon.